Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity is away today. In his place, we're happy to have Scott Bertram, General Manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, on the campus of Hillsdale College, where he's also a lecturer in journalism. He directs the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. He hosts the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour. And in his spare time, somehow there is some, he not only is kind enough to join me periodically, but he's also the co-host of the Political Beats podcast and the Wasn't That Special podcast celebrating 50 years of Saturday Night Live. And Scott, let's dig right in here, because one of the issues that popped up on Capitol Hill yesterday is not only the fight over what aid ought to look like for Israel. Should there be aid to Ukraine? Should there be border security funding? Should there be funding for Taiwan? And House Speaker Mike Johnson, with his ever-narrowing majority, wanted to bundle all the foreign aid and also decided that border security spending amendments were not germane. And that was the last straw for a number of people. The push to get closer and closer to vacating the chair, just like they did with Kevin McCarthy, was already underway. Marjorie Taylor Greene had gotten that ball rolling. And now Thomas Massie of Kentucky is jumping on, saying the only thing that Speaker Mike Johnson can do right now is to resign, or we're going to have to go through this whole thing again. Here's what he told CNN yesterday.
There's only one person right now who can stop us from going into what happened last fall, and that's Mike Johnson. He's cleaning the barn, that's obvious.
So you want him to resign? You want him to resign?
Yes. Yeah, I asked him to resign.
What did he say?
He said he would not. And then I said, well, you're the one who's going to put us into this. Because the motion is going to get called, okay? Does anybody doubt that? The motion will get called, and then he's going to lose more votes than Kevin McCarthy.
Well, maybe he will among the Republicans, Scott. I suspect that if it's a matter of fighting over Ukraine aid, that the Democrats probably won't vote en masse to remove him as they did with Kevin McCarthy. But there's still obviously chaos inside the Republican conference. There's plenty of reasons to not be pleased with Mike Johnson and the way he's shepherded some of the things across the Hill. But you do have to look at the reality here and see that he's got, 218, I think, maybe 217 on some days. And it's just very, very thin margin with a number of vacant House seats that will be decided in special elections soon. And so there's only so much you can do. And when there are a handful of people in your own caucus who are reluctant to go along with a lot of things, that makes it more and more difficult. I would love to see a unified Republican approach here. I would love to see a Republican bill get through the House and then get reconciled to something in the Senate to give the Republicans a better negotiating platform to go off of here. But to basically tee up a rerun of what we saw in October, when it's only going to be even tougher to get a new speaker, and I can't imagine who would want the job at this point. I don't know. What do you make of what we're seeing right now among Republicans on the Hill?
I don't know the strategy. I don't know what the next step is. My friend and I have this saying whenever we consider firing a head football coach or a manager, you always got to know, okay, who are you going to get? Right? That's the question you have to answer before you move. Who are you going to get? Who's going to replace, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan? Who's going to replace Pedro Grifol on the south side of Chicago? Who are you going to get? Who's out there? Who's going to be better? What's your next move? And if you don't have an answer to that question, all these machinations seem foolish. You'll be, again, thrust back into a situation very similar to what happened in the fall, as Congressman Massie admits there, and going through multiple elections and trying to find someone who wants the job, who wants to step up, and who is acceptable to a vast number, or essentially all, of the Republican caucus. That's a very hard thing to do. At this point, if that vote's called, there have been, I think, at least one, if not two Democrats who have said they'll step forward to support Mike Johnson to keep him in that spot. But that is a black mark against him in people's eyes, too. He's going to be the speaker who was saved by Democrats, which will hamstring him for the rest of his time as speaker, no matter how long that is. The best solution to all of this, of course, is to win a huge majority in November and do away with questions about whether or not you have a 1-seat, 3-seat, 5-seat majority in the House. But it's a very difficult situation, and made more difficult, as you alluded to, by the fact that some Republicans are leaving early. There's frustration that that no one is able to do the job in Washington right now. You're not able to legislate. You're not able to talk. There's more discussion about who the speaker is and who the next speaker is going to be, and is there a motion to vacate and where are the votes than there is necessarily about what the policy is going to be, or how do we move forward border security spending, or how do we move forward spending to support Israel. And almost at a separate matter, I sympathize with people who are very frustrated by this whole thing, because we're talking about, $95 billion. Money is the numbers are so big, it is hard for anyone to get their arms around the amount of spending happening as we add, $1 trillion in debt every 3 months, whatever the pace is right now, $35 trillion in debt. At some point, those numbers mean something. Interest rates, again, continue to be high. The amount of money we're paying to service that debt continues to rise. That's a big problem now. It's going to be a bigger problem in the future. And at that point, little nibbles aren't going to do much to deal with the deficit or the debt problem. That's when, more draconian measures might be needed. So there's a lot going on. I don't see how replacing Mike Johnson fixes any of those things right now, especially when, as far as I can tell, there really is no plan for what's next. Who are you going to get? Who's going to be hired? Who's the next speaker? No one really knows, except not this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the numbers game just doesn't work for Republicans right now. You want to be as aggressively conservative as you can in the House, but realizing that you don't control the Senate, you don't control the White House. Right. And so ultimately you're going to have to get a deal done in a number of ways. I do sympathize, of course, with those, as you mentioned, nearly $100 billion in this bill. And then the speaker, and I'm sure others, saying we can't deal with our own national security in this particular situation. Very, very frustrating. There needs to be more than just more money thrown at the border. There needs to be policy changes, and I think it needs to go a lot deeper than what the Senate bill was looking at. The House actually did a really good job in passing their border security bill, and the Senate won't touch it, and the media pretends it doesn't exist. So a lot of frustrations in a number of areas on this, Scott, and I don't envy Mike Johnson. I think he could have been more aggressive in a number of different ways, but ultimately rearranging the deck chairs here isn't going to change much. Also, unless a mind has been changed in the past week or so, he has the support of former President Trump. He has the support of the shoe-in nominee for the presidential nomination in November, and that doesn't seem to have changed many minds. Here's some great news. Meat. Good meat delivered on your front porch. Forget the people talking about bugs and near meat and all that nonsense. This is great stuff, and you get to decide what comes in your Moink box. I love getting the Moink box. It's got fantastic steaks, literally the best bacon I've ever had, chicken, pork chops, and so much more. You can't go wrong with the Moink box.
The Moink difference is a difference you can taste. And you can feel good about knowing you're helping family farms stay financially independent, too. And as Greg mentioned, you choose the meat delivered in every box. Ribeyes, chicken breasts, pork chops, salmon fillets, and much more. Plus, you can cancel anytime.
It's a win all the way around. It's a fantastic product. You get to choose what's in it, and Moink is helping to save rural America. So I can tell you that I love it. I know that you will too. Keep American farming going by signing up at moinkbox.com/martini right now. And listeners of this show get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but just for a limited time. It's spelled MOINK box.com/martini. That's moinkbox.com/martini. All right, Scott, on to our second crazy martini now, and this one is truly bizarre. Monday was the WNBA draft, which I know you go through mock draft versions of the WNBA draft just religiously all the way leading up to it, as we all do, of course. But no, it took on a little more interest this year because of Caitlin Clark of Iowa going with the first pick, and she legitimately brought more attention than usual to the women's NCAA tournament. And so as a result, a few other players became a little bit more well-known as well. And now the inevitable comments come from the left, and they're in desperate need of an economic reality check. President Biden yesterday, women in sports continue to push new boundaries and inspire us all. But right now we're seeing that even if you're the best, women are not paid their fair share. It's time that we give our daughters the same opportunities as our sons and ensure that women are paid what they deserve. And the premise for all this is to go back to Caitlin Clark, and it's she's estimated to make in her 4-year rookie contract a little more than $338,000 total. She's going to get more than $76,000 in her rookie year, and by 2027, which is an option year, she's going to make $97,500, which is obviously a lot less than the NBA players make. But here's the insane part. There's a reason for this, but that doesn't mean that the left isn't going to push this anyway. Ro Khanna is essentially echoing Joe Biden. Khanna is a congressman from California. He says the first pick in the NBA draft will make around $10 million in 1 year. Caitlin Clark will make $76,535. That is wrong. Pay women what they deserve. And then he gets called out by somebody saying, well, how many games do you go to? How many games do you watch? And he says, oh, you don't need to watch WNBA games to speak about pay fairness. Clark will bring new fans and likely juice WNBA ratings. She should be compensated for the expected ratings increase she will bring. NBA players like Bird, Jordan, Johnson did the same. Isn't this basic economics? No. What's basic economics, Scott, is that the WNBA is a giant money loser that only continues to exist because of the generosity of the NBA. What we don't understand from the left when it's minimum wage or this 77 cents on the dollar, allegedly, it's been debunked many times, that women make compared to men. It's not comparing apples to apples here. And the bottom line is the NBA, their players make more money because they sell more tickets and they've got giant TV ratings packages with different providers, mainly ESPN right now, whereas the WNBA doesn't have the same level of interest, not even close.
And we don't know anything yet. Caitlin Clark's success has been driven through the NCAA and her time with the University of Iowa. We know that there has been an increase, at least the second half of the season, into the playoffs or into the tournament for the women's games. Women's game outrated the men's game, championship game this year. We don't know, to Ro Khanna's point, we don't know the effect she's going to have on the WNBA at all. Some attendance boosts in markets where she's playing? Probably. Better for Indiana? Probably. You know, the games when she's on the road? Yes. But in terms of TV numbers, we don't know any of that. We don't know the effect that one player can have on the WNBA as of yet. Certainly no one has had the cultural impact of Caitlin Clark previously in women's basketball, in college basketball. But that's not to say there have not been higher profile women stars. And generally, as we look at the numbers, as they've matriculated up to the WNBA, that sort of interest has not been sustained. Will it be different this time? It's possible. With Caitlin Clark, she's a different kind of player. But until we see that, I'm not sure, paying on future rate, we have no idea how that's going to be extrapolated forward in terms of ratings and revenue. We just have no idea whatsoever. And the quote from Ro Khanna, pay women what they deserve. Deserve is doing a lot of work there. You could argue that deserve is exactly what's happening right now. What they're asking for is, again, something more along the lines of equity, fairness, whatever buzzword they want to use, saying that they should be paid an equitable level for the best player in the WNBA and the best player in the NBA, or at least the rookie pay scale. But it makes no financial sense. It makes no economic sense. It's the logical progression of the argument that they've had. Well, it was a court case at some point too, right, with the U.S. women's soccer team and the U.S. men's soccer team about how much the women were being paid compared to the men. You looked at, there's the success, but then you also looked at ratings and the prize pools and things like that. This is sort of the logical progression of that argument, which is, the best rookie, theoretically, we assume should be paid as well as the number one pick in the NBA draft. But it makes no financial sense. They're two completely separate entities when it comes to financials. And again, to go back, we don't know. We don't know anything about the impact she'll have on the WNBA, on ratings, on revenue. To pay her $10 million a year seems foolish when we have no guarantee of results.
No, that's exactly right. 3 thoughts come to mind. First of all, I agree with former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, which is a pretty common thing. And he says, basically, can we at least protect the women's game and only allow women to play it? So be good to define what a woman is before we get into this debate. Secondly, the other 2 things I thought of is, first of all, you have the comedian Bill Burr. I can't play the clip because he has too many 4-letter words, but he's done a rant on the WNBA, and he's basically like, all you people who think that the WNBA is not given fair pay, name the top 5 WNBA players of all time. Name 5 WNBA franchises. Name the one in your own hometown. How many games have you been to? And then the other one was, and I think, with Adam Silver being quite the woke commissioner of the NBA, why not? If he's all interested in equity, why not just pool all the money together and divvy it up between the NBA and the WNBA players? How do you think the NBA players would feel about that one?
Not so great. Not so great in the end. Women would love it, I'm sure. The opportunities to grow the pot are there, and the opportunities for wealth when it comes to endorsements, outside money. We just went through this conversation about whether or not Caitlin Clark was giving up money by leaving Iowa to go to the WNBA and what the salary was compared to NIL money in college. So I on some level, you just want to say, just take the W on this one. Take the win. Women's basketball had an outstanding year in college at the college ranks. Ratings were boffo. The championship game did 18 million viewers. Fantastic. There's excitement about Caitlin Clark. We'll see if that excitement carries up until the beginning of the WNBA season, which, sorry, Greg, I can't tell you when that is. I have no idea when they start playing. But let's see how it plays out. There will be opportunities. People are Michael Jordan for years made more on his endorsements than he did for the Bulls. You look at the contracts he was signing, in the early 90s, or I think the big contract was 1989, 1990. I mean, compared to what the value he brought to the league, to the team, it was nothing. But that was sort of the scale of the NBA at that time.
No, absolutely. And then you had Nike and McDonald's and Gatorade and everything else, Wheaties probably, and it just, dwarfed it. And that'll be the situation for Caitlin Clark as well. I don't know exactly when it starts. They play over the summertime, but they only play about a 40-game season, I also discovered. So half the work. And you're wanting equal pay too. So in addition to not bringing in the revenue. So, and this is not to denigrate women's sports. My very first job in journalism was covering high school girls basketball while I was in high school. And I loved it. I loved that they got more attention for the hard work they were putting in. But when it comes to professional sports, it's an economics game. Do you bring in the revenue? And once you do, your salary will go up. It's the same thing with the value you provide if you work at a fast food restaurant and everything else. But the Democrats just don't seem to get this. Their cluelessness on economics might make for a temporarily beneficial talking point, but policy-wise, it's truly frightening. All right, let's talk about 4Patriots. That's also good news today. 4patriots.com/martini is where you want to go. Fantastic deals on so many things. You can get your last chance at deals on the Patriot Pure line of items, including the UV phone sanitizer, the UV wand, the sanitation solution machine, and the disinfecting power bank. But right now, their deluxe 3-month survival food kits are back in stock after being sold out for more than a year. These 3-month kits have 688 total servings per kit, which is about 8 per day, also about 1,500 calories per day. And better recipes than ever. Pancakes, mac and cheese, chili, potato soup, spaghetti, lasagna, and more. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. You can stash food away and be confident that whenever a disaster strikes, you and your family will be ready. Go to 4patriots.com/martini to get the deluxe 3-month survival food kit and the peace of mind you deserve. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. That's the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. Well, the craziness abounds, obviously, as we've discussed in our first 2 martinis today, but let's zero in a little bit more on what a poor high school student is having to endure as a result of telling the truth, the legal truth here. This is in North Carolina. This is from the Carolina Journal. A 16-year-old student at Central Davidson High School in Lexington, North Carolina, was suspended for 3 days last week after using the term illegal alien during a vocabulary assignment in his English class. Leah McGee's son has a teacher who assigned vocabulary words during class last Tuesday, including the word alien. McGee says her son made an effort to understand the assignment and responded to his teacher saying, like space aliens or illegal aliens without the green cards. According to an email describing the incident sent to local officials and shared with Carolina Journal, a young man in class took offense to his question and reportedly threatened to fight him, prompting the teacher to call in the assistant principal. Ultimately, his words were deemed by administrative staff to be offensive and disrespectful to classmates who are Hispanic. Quote, I didn't make a statement directed towards anyone. I asked a question, he said. I wasn't speaking of Hispanics because everyone from other countries needs green cards, and the term illegal alien is an actual term that I hear on the news and can find in the dictionary. So Typical situation here, Scott, where the kid who wants to fight, I don't know if he got any punishment whatsoever, but the kid who asks, how are we defining alien for this assignment? 3 days suspension.
I noticed that, or I noticed that was not in the story. We can't say with certainty the other student was not disciplined, but it's not in the story. It does seem like someone who was ready to fight over a phrase like that at a high school classroom also deserves some kind of discipline. I think about this in using a term that is proper, using a term that is accurate, and not even using it in a pejorative way, but asking for clarity on a vocabulary assignment, apparently. That's what the story tells us. And getting a 3-day suspension would have made me think of, and I don't know, because I've been too far long out and don't have children at that age right now, but how do these policies also relate to preferred pronouns for students? I don't know, but I imagine if you're being suspended 3 days for saying illegal alien, not using someone's preferred pronouns in a classroom probably would result in very similar punishment. And that's highly troubling that we are forcing, in one of those cases, forcing language onto our young people. And in a case like the one we're talking about today, taking language away, taking accurate language away from our young students. It's manipulation of words, manipulation of language, forcing someone to say something or not to say something, in this case, that is an accurate term. There's just so many things I haven't thought about because I've been away from high school for so long now, but probably will have to think about soon as my kids get close to that age, and how high schools are policing language, how they identify, if this policy extends to pronoun usage, how that even is policed, or how that is, what kind of rules, regulations they have in that sort of arena. Those are the things that I think about when I hear a story like this.
No, that's exactly right. And when we were in high school, at least where I grew up, the complainer is usually the one that got in trouble, not the one who asked the question. So part of me says, well, maybe conservatives just need to complain more, but I don't think that would work because the schools are also sensitive to the particular position that's happening here. So the person that's offended by the idea of illegal aliens in reference to people who don't have green cards is going to get a lot more sympathy in most of these situations than someone who's offended if you attack conservatism or conservative position or Christianity or something like that.
Right.
They're going to get the hand in the face and have the door slammed on them. It's not just a matter of who is the squeaky wheel in these situations, I think.
You also think about how speech is suppressed in a way that people are afraid to say, perhaps afraid to write something for a school paper. I think back to my college newspaper where I was a columnist writing. I look back now and I don't love what I wrote, right? I would write it so much better today. But, boilerplate conservative type commentary, and trying to write that today would result in a number of consequences, none of which I would like, whether that be, stop writing the column or some sort of protest against me. Things have changed very quickly. That's 20 years, a little less than 20 years, a little more than 20 years, I guess, at this point. But the things change so quickly in terms of what is allowed and what you feel comfortable saying, and the chilling effect that it has on speech. That's another aspect that we should consider, too.
Scott, always great to have you with us. Thanks for your time today, and we'll actually chat with you a couple times next week, so we look forward to that, too.
That's the plan. Thank you, Greg.
Scott Bertram is the general manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM on the campus of Hillsdale College, where he also is a lecturer in journalism. He directs the Hillsdale College Podcast Network and is host of the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour. And he's also the co-host of the Political Beats podcast and Wasn't That Special, 50 Years of Saturday Night Live. Check that out at wasn'tthatspecial.com. I'm Greg Corumbus of Radio America. Jim Garrity will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks very much also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us all on X. Scott is at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM. Jim is at Jim Garrity, and I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.